At exactly 2:17 a.m., the billionaire nobody believed could ever fall, sat alone in a broken-down pickup truck, staring at the woman he thought loved him. She stood in the doorway of another man's house, laughing. Laughing at him. At his new life. At the lie he told her that he had lost everything. And she said something that shattered him so deeply he would remember it for the rest of his life. But to understand how they got here, you must know the story of the man who tested loyalty and the woman who failed that test the moment she thought he had nothing. Who was this billionaire really? Why did he lie to his own wife? What did she do when she believed he was broke? And how did one single night expose everything she had ever hidden? This is not just a story about money. It is a story about character, about masks people wear, and what happens when life forces those masks to fall. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will make you question everything you thought you knew about love, loyalty, and the true nature of the people closest to you. Michael Richardson, age 53. A self-made industrial billionaire with calm eyes, a gentle presence, and a quiet seriousness that people mistake for softness. Michael did not grow up rich. He built his empire from the ground up through factories, logistics, and manufacturing. His childhood was spent in a small apartment on the wrong side of town, watching his mother work 3 jobs just to keep food on the table. He remembered the feeling of hunger, the embarrassment of worn-out shoes, the determination that burned in his chest every single day. He promised himself that one day he would never feel that helplessness again. And he kept that promise. By the time he was 30, Michael had built his first factory. By 40, he owned a network of manufacturing plants across 3 states. By 50, he was worth over $2 billion. But success came with a price. Loneliness. The kind that echoes in empty mansions and fills silent nights with questions. Who really cares about me? Who sees me beyond the money? Who would stand beside me if everything disappeared? Until he met Angela. Angela Richardson, age 43. Beautiful, charismatic, warm in public but always calculating. A woman who understood the power of appearances. She had grown up middle class, comfortable but never wealthy. She knew what it was like to want more. To dream of a life where money wasn't a concern. Where status opened doors. Where luxury was the norm, not the exception. When they met at a charity fundraiser 12 years ago, she seemed perfect. Supportive. Loving. Attentive. The kind of woman a lonely man would fall hard for. And he did. She listened when he talked about his childhood struggles. She held his hand when he shared his fears about the business. She laughed at his jokes and made him feel seen in ways he hadn't felt in years. She was everything he thought he needed. 10 years after their marriage, he believed he had found a partner. Someone who loved him, not his success, not his wealth, not his influence. But life has a way of testing what we hold closest. And Michael decided to test something no one ever should. Michael sat in his doctor's office one afternoon, listening to words that felt like hammers against his chest. The doctor, a man he had known for 15 years, looked at him with genuine concern. Michael, your blood pressure is dangerously high. Your stress levels are off the charts. Your heart is showing signs of strain. If you don't make changes now, we're looking at a serious cardiac event within the next few years. Stress is killing you. Your heart, your mind, everything is stretched thin. You need to step back. Delegate more. Take time for yourself. For the first time in his life, Michael thought about stepping away. Away from the company. Away from the pressure. Away from everything. He thought about what mattered most. His health. His happiness. His relationships. That night, lying in bed next to Angela, he watched her scroll through her phone. She was always on that phone. Shopping. Messaging. Scrolling through social media. She barely looked at him anymore. When was the last time they had a real conversation? When was the last time she asked how he was feeling? When was the last time she seemed genuinely interested in his life beyond what it provided for her? A strange thought entered his mind. What if I lost everything? Would she still be here? Would she still love me? Would she still see value in who I am rather than what I have? The question haunted him for days. He couldn't shake it. It consumed his thoughts during meetings, distracted him during meals, kept him awake at night. So he created a plan that was strange, risky, but powerful. He would pretend to lose everything. Every cent, every asset, every privilege. For 1 month. To see who would remain by his side. He consulted with his most trusted attorney, a man who had been with him since the beginning. The attorney was skeptical. Michael, are you sure about this? This could backfire in ways you can't predict. But Michael was determined. I need to know the truth. I need to know if the woman I married loves me or loves what I can give her. The attorney nodded slowly. All right. Let's create the illusion. They crafted a story about bad investments, market crashes, frozen assets, and mounting debts. They prepared documents that looked authentic. They rehearsed every detail. That evening, Michael sat Angela down in their dining room. The chandeliers above them cast soft light across the mahogany table. The same table where they had celebrated anniversaries, hosted dinner parties, and shared countless meals. "Angela, something has happened." His voice was steady, but his heart raced. "The company, my investments, I've lost almost everything." Her hands froze midair, her wine glass suspended between the table and her lips. "Everything?" Her voice was barely a whisper. Michael nodded slowly, watching her face carefully. "A series of bad decisions, market collapses, frozen accounts. We're looking at financial ruin." Her eyes widened. Not with concern for him. Not with compassion or support. But with something else. Fear. Raw, undisguised fear. Fear for herself. "I need us to tighten expenses significantly. Move to the old house in Lakeview. The one I grew up in. Let go of the staff, the cars, the country club membership. We need to live modestly until I can rebuild." Angela's face went pale. She set her wine glass down with a trembling hand. "Michael, this is too much." Her voice cracked. "How could you let this happen? How could you be so careless?" Not once did she ask if he was okay. Not once did she offer comfort or support. Her first instinct was blame. Accusation. Self-preservation. In that moment, something inside her changed. Quietly. Sharply. Dangerously. And that night, Michael heard her say something on the phone that nearly stopped his breath. He was in the hallway about to enter their bedroom when he heard her voice through the door. "I can't believe this is happening. No, he says we've lost everything. Everything. I don't know what I'm going to do. I can't live like this. I won't." Before we go any further, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. We always enjoy seeing the places our viewers tune in from. And if you're new to the channel, be sure to click the subscribe button so you never miss any of our next powerful videos. The next morning, they moved into a small, dusty house on the outskirts of town. The kind of place Michael grew up in. The kind of place Angela had never known. It was a modest two-bedroom with faded wallpaper, creaking floors, and windows that didn't quite seal properly. The neighborhood was quiet, working class, filled with people who lived paycheck to paycheck. Michael felt a strange sense of nostalgia. This was familiar territory. But for Angela, it was a nightmare. She stood in the middle of the tiny living room, looking around with barely concealed disgust. "This is where we're living?" Her voice was sharp, cutting. Michael nodded. "For now. Just until things stabilize." She refused to touch any box. She spent hours scrolling on her phone, sitting on the worn couch, occasionally sighing loudly as if to make sure Michael knew how unhappy she was. She didn't cook. She didn't clean. She didn't ask if he needed help unpacking. She didn't ask if he was okay. She was waiting, watching, evaluating. That night, Michael lay on a mattress on the floor of their bedroom. They couldn't afford a bed frame. At least that's what he told her. Angela stayed in the other room, claiming she needed space. Michael heard her whispering on the phone again. "I can't stay with a man who has nothing. I'm not built for this kind of suffering. I deserve better than this. Just give me time. I'll figure something out. I'll leave soon." Michael sat alone in the darkness, holding back tears. His chest tightened. His heart trembled. The woman he had loved for over a decade, the woman he had built a life with, the woman he thought would stand by him through anything, was already planning her exit. As the days passed, her true character unfolded like rotten petals. On the third day, she insulted him openly. "You know, I always wondered what kind of man you really were underneath all that money. Now I see. You're just ordinary. Nothing special." Michael said nothing. He watched. He listened. He absorbed every cruel word. On the fifth day, she mocked him in front of a neighbor. "This is my husband. The man who had everything and threw it all away. Can you believe it?" The neighbor looked uncomfortable and excused herself quickly. By the seventh day, Angela stopped pretending to care. She moved her belongings to the spare room. She stopped speaking to him unless absolutely necessary. And when she did speak, her words were like knives. "You can't even afford to take me to dinner anymore. What kind of man can't provide for his wife? You're pathetic." Michael sat on the edge of their mattress, staring at the wall. He remembered their wedding day. The vow she spoke. For better or for worse. For richer or for poorer. In sickness and in health. The tears in her eyes. Had it all been a lie? Or had she simply convinced herself that she loved him when really she only loved what he represented? The status. The security. The lifestyle. On the 10th day, Michael followed Angela to a coffee shop downtown. She had dressed up, wearing makeup and perfume, something she hadn't done in days. She told him she was meeting an old friend. But Michael's instincts told him otherwise. She met a man there. Younger than Michael. Well-dressed. Confident. They sat close. Too close. She laughed at his jokes, the same bright, flirtatious laugh she used to give Michael. She touched his hand across the table. Leaned in when he whispered something in her ear. Michael watched from across the street, hidden behind a newspaper, his heart shattering with every second. When they left, she kissed the man on the cheek. Not a friendly kiss. Something more. Something intimate. Michael's hands shook as he drove back to the small house. He sat in the driveway for an hour, unable to move. Unable to process what he had just witnessed. The woman he married was already moving on. Already searching for her next source of security. Already betraying him. If this story already has your heart racing, comment, "I'm still watching." Let's see who's truly following till the end. By the 14th day, Angela had stopped hiding it entirely. She no longer made excuses. She no longer pretended to care about appearances. She told Michael she was going out one evening. It was around 7 p.m. She had spent an hour getting ready, curling her hair, applying makeup, wearing a dress Michael had bought her for their anniversary 2 years ago. When he asked where she was going, she smiled coldly. To see someone who can actually provide. Someone who knows how to take care of a woman. Someone who appreciates me. Michael felt his throat tighten. Oh. His voice was barely audible. Does it matter? You wouldn't know him anyway. He's successful. Everything you used to be. Before you ruined everything. She grabbed her purse and walked toward the door. Don't wait up. She left without another word, without a backward glance, without any hint of guilt or shame. Michael sat in the empty house, surrounded by silence. The walls seemed to close in on him. The air felt heavy, suffocating. He thought about the years they had spent together. The vacations to Europe where they walked hand in hand through cobblestone streets. The quiet Sunday mornings where they read the newspaper together over coffee. The promises they made to each other under a canopy of stars. Had any of it been real? Or had she been playing a role the entire time, waiting for the moment when she could upgrade to something better? He couldn't sit still any longer. He needed to know. Needed to see with his own eyes. Needed to understand the depth of her betrayal. He decided to follow her again. He drove his old pickup truck through the rain that had started falling, keeping a safe distance behind her taxi. The windshield wipers scraped rhythmically against the glass. The city lights blurred through the water. She traveled across town to an upscale neighborhood. Houses with gates and manicured lawns and luxury cars in the driveways. The kind of neighborhood they used to live in. The kind of neighborhood that represented everything she thought she had lost. She stopped at one house in particular. A mansion with tall windows and warm lights spilling out onto the street. Modern architecture. Expensive landscaping. A fountain in the front yard. Michael parked across the road and watched, rain hammering against the windshield. Angela walked up to the door with confidence, her heels clicking against the wet pavement. The door opened immediately as if someone had been waiting for her. A man stepped out. Even from a distance, Michael recognized him. David Morrison. A wealthy investor in his early 40s. Someone Michael had mentored years ago when David was just starting out in business. Michael had given him advice over countless lunches. Introduced him to important contacts who helped him secure funding. Helped him close his first major deal that launched his career. David owed much of his success to Michael's guidance and generosity. And now, here he was, welcoming Michael's wife into his home. Angela stepped into David's arms without hesitation. They embraced. Long, intimate. Familiar. Then they went inside, the door closing behind them, shutting Michael out of a world he no longer belonged to. Michael sat in his truck, rain hammering against the windshield, feeling numb. Empty. Betrayed in ways he never imagined possible. Not just by his wife but by someone he had helped. Someone he had trusted. Someone who had sat at his dinner table, shaken his hand, called him mentor and friend. The betrayal was layered, multidimensional, crushing him from every angle. An hour passed. Then another. Michael couldn't bring himself to leave. He needed to see. Needed to know. Needed to understand how deep the betrayal went. His mind raced with questions. How long had this been going on? Had they been involved before Michael's supposed financial collapse? Or had Angela reached out to David the moment she thought Michael was broke? Had David pursued her or had she pursued him? Did they laugh about Michael together? Did they mock him? Finally, Angela appeared in one of the upstairs windows. The curtains were open, the lights bright. She was laughing, her head thrown back, her hand resting on David's chest. They looked comfortable together. Natural. Like they had done this many times before. Then she said something. Michael couldn't hear the words, but he could read her lips. He had watched her speak 1,000 times. He knew her expressions, her mannerisms. And what he saw crushed him. Thank God he's broke. Now I can finally be with someone who deserves me. Michael is useless now. A man without money is just nothing. Those words cut deeper than any knife. Michael collapsed against his steering wheel, tears streaming down his face, mixing with the rain that leaked through the slightly open window. He had given her everything. 10 years of his life. His trust. His love. His devotion. And in return she had been waiting. Waiting for the moment she could leave without guilt. Waiting for someone better. Someone richer. Someone who could provide the lifestyle she felt entitled to. Michael drove back to the small house in a daze. The streets were empty. The rain had intensified. He could barely see through the tears in the water. He parked in the driveway and sat there for another hour, engine off, lights off, just sitting in the darkness. For the first time in his life he felt truly broken. Not because of money. Not because of business. Not because of reputation. But because the woman he loved had never really loved him at all. She had loved what he could give her. The lifestyle. The status. The security. The prestige. Without those things he was nothing to her. Less than nothing. He was an obstacle. An embarrassment. Something to be discarded and replaced. The next morning Michael woke with a strange sense of clarity. The pain was still there, sharp and persistent, but beneath it was something else. Resolve. Determination. Strength he didn't know he still possessed. He had spent weeks watching Angela reveal her true character. He had given her every opportunity to prove him wrong, to show compassion, to demonstrate the love she claimed to feel. And she had failed every single test. Not because of the test itself, but because of who she truly was underneath the mask she had worn for years. He spent the day making phone calls, arranging things, preparing for what came next. He called his attorney and gave him the signal. It's time. And the test. Activate everything we prepared. He called his financial team and instructed them to restore his accounts, his access, his status. He called the security company and had them change all the codes at the mansion. He called his personal assistant and told her to prepare the house for his return. Everything needed to be perfect. That evening, Angela came home late again. It was past midnight. She didn't bother explaining where she had been. She smelled of expensive cologne that wasn't Michael's. She walked past him without a word, without acknowledgement, as if he were invisible. She went straight to her room and closed the door. Michael sat at the kitchen table, a pen in his hand, writing on paper he had bought from the dollar store. He wrote everything he felt, everything he had seen, everything he now understood about their marriage. Angela, thank you. Thank you for showing me the truth. Thank you for revealing who you really are when the comfort and luxury are stripped away. Thank you for freeing me from the illusion that you loved me for anything other than my wealth. You loved my success, not my soul. You loved the lifestyle I provided, not the man who provided it. And now I know. I never lost my wealth. I never lost my success. I never lost my business. It was all a test. A test to see who would stand by me when I had nothing. A test to see if the woman I married valued me as a person or only as a provider. And you failed that test completely. By the time you read this, I will be back home. My real home. My real life. The mansion you thought we lost. The business you thought had collapsed. The wealth you thought had disappeared. All of it still exists. All of it is still mine. And none of it will ever be yours again. Take whatever you want from this small house. It suits you. Because a queen of gold cannot survive without gold. And you have revealed yourself to be exactly that. Someone whose love has a price tag. Someone whose loyalty depends on a bank account. Someone whose commitment lasts only as long as the benefits continue. I wish you well in your search for the next man who can provide what you think you deserve. But know this. True love doesn't abandon. True loyalty doesn't waver. True commitment doesn't depend on circumstances. And you possess none of those qualities. Michael folded the letter carefully and placed it on the table where she would see it in the morning. Then he packed a single bag with the few personal items he had brought to the small house. He took one last look around at the place that had been his prison for the past month. The place where his marriage had died. The place where illusions had been shattered and truth had been revealed. Then he walked out the door for the final time. He drove back to his real home in the darkness, the city quiet around him, the streets empty. The mansion on the hill. The place Angela thought they had lost. Security greeted him at the gate with warm smiles. Welcome back, Mr. Richardson. We've missed you, sir. It's so good to see you home. Michael nodded, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. It's good to be home. Thank you for your patience during this difficult time. Inside, everything was exactly as he had left it. The marble floors gleamed. The chandeliers sparkled. The air smelled of fresh flowers that his staff had placed throughout the house. His assistant greeted him in the foyer. Mr. Richardson, everything is prepared as you requested. All access codes have been changed. Security protocols have been updated. The legal team is ready to proceed with the divorce filing first thing tomorrow morning. Michael thanked her and made his way to his study. He poured himself a drink, something he hadn't allowed himself during the test, and stood by the window overlooking the city. Lights twinkled below him like stars. He thought about Angela waking up in that small house, finding the letter, realizing what had happened. Part of him felt guilty for deceiving her. But a larger part felt relieved. Relieved that he finally knew the truth. Relieved that he could move forward without wondering. Relieved that he hadn't wasted any more years on someone who didn't deserve them. The next morning, Angela woke in the small house to find it empty. Michael was gone. No note explaining where. No text message. No missed calls. Just silence. She wandered through the rooms, confused, her head pounding from the wine she had drunk at David's house the night before. Where did he go? Did he finally give up and leave? Did he abandon her here in this awful place? Then she saw the letter on the kitchen table. Her name written across the front in Michael's neat handwriting. She picked it up slowly, her hands trembling for reasons she couldn't quite identify. She opened it and began to read. With each word, her face grew paler. Her hands shook harder. Her breath came faster. By the time she finished, the letter slipped from her fingers and fell to the floor like a dead leaf. No. This can't be real. It was a test? It was all a lie? He still has everything? Her mind raced, trying to process the information, trying to understand the implications. She grabbed her phone and called Michael. It went straight to voicemail. She called again, and again, and again. No answer. Panic set in, cold and sharp, cutting through the confusion. She grabbed her purse and rushed out to her car, not bothering to change out of the clothes she had slept in. She drove across town to the mansion, the place she thought they had lost. Her heart pounded. Her mind spun with excuses, explanations, things she could say to make this right. But as she approached the gate, security stepped out, blocking her path. I'm sorry, ma'am. You're not authorized to enter. Angela's eyes widened in disbelief. What do you mean? I live here. This is my home. Security, a man named Thomas who had worked for Michael for 8 years, checked his tablet with a neutral expression. Your access was revoked early this morning, Mrs. Richardson. I have instructions not to allow you on the property. Please leave the premises. No, this is impossible. You can't do this. I need to speak to Michael. I need to explain. He's not available, ma'am. And I'm going to have to ask you to leave now before we have to involve law enforcement. Angela stood there, frozen, unable to believe what was happening. She looked up at the mansion, past the security gate, through the tall windows where she could see lights on. Movement inside. Staff going about their duties. Life continuing without her as if she had never existed. Angela screamed Michael's name. Her voice was raw, desperate, breaking. She begged to be let in. Promised she could explain everything. Swore it wasn't what it looked like. But no one answered. Thomas remained professional but firm, his hand hovering near his radio, ready to call for backup if necessary. Another security guard appeared from the guardhouse, a silent warning. Angela stood there for several more minutes, crying, pleading, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. Finally, defeated, she returned to her car. She sat behind the wheel, shaking, crying, trying to understand what had just happened. How had everything gone so wrong so quickly? How had Michael known? How long had he been planning this? She pulled out her phone with trembling fingers and called David. He didn't answer. She called again, letting it ring until it went to voicemail. She left a message, her voice frantic. David, it's me. Something terrible has happened. I need to talk to you. Please call me back. Please. She waited. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. 15. Finally, her phone buzzed with a text message. Sorry, Angela. This was fun while it lasted, but I can't get involved in your drama with Michael. He's a powerful man and I can't afford to make an enemy of him. What we had was just casual. I thought you understood that. Good luck with everything. She stared at the message, reading it over and over, each word driving another nail into the coffin of her old life. Over the next several days, Angela tried everything she could think of. She hired a lawyer, the best one she could find with the limited funds she had access to. But Michael's legal team was prepared, armed with evidence and documentation that made her case hopeless. The prenuptial agreement she had signed 10 years ago was ironclad, drafted by the best attorneys money could buy. She would receive a modest settlement, enough to live comfortably, but nothing close to the lifestyle she had enjoyed as Michael's wife. Nothing close to what she had imagined. She tried reaching out to friends, the same friends who had surrounded her at parties and charity galas when she was married to a billionaire. Most didn't return her calls. The few who did were polite but distant, offering sympathy that felt hollow and promises of lunch that would never happen. She tried contacting David again, driving to his house one afternoon, desperate for any connection to her old life. He refused to open the door, though she could see his car in the driveway and lights on inside. She rang the doorbell repeatedly, knocked on the door, called his name. Eventually a woman answered. David's assistant, cool and professional. Mr. Morrison has asked me to inform you that any further attempts to contact him will be considered harassment and appropriate legal action will be taken. Please leave now. The door closed firmly in Angela's face. She stood on the doorstep, humiliated, realizing that David had never cared about her at all. She had been a conquest, a thrill, a way to feel superior by taking something that belonged to his former mentor. Angela returned to the small house in Lakeview, the house Michael had rented for their test. It felt even smaller now, even more suffocating. The walls seemed to press in on her. She sat on the worn couch, staring at the walls, and for the first time in years she was forced to confront who she really was. Not the version of herself she presented to the world. Not the image she had carefully cultivated. But the truth. The ugly, uncomfortable truth she had been avoiding. She thought about the last 10 years, the life she had lived, the woman she had become. She had convinced herself that she loved Michael, that she was a good wife, a devoted partner. But the truth was uglier than she wanted to admit. She had loved the life he provided. The luxury. The status. The admiration from others. The ability to walk into any room and command respect simply because of who her husband was. The ease of never worrying about money. The thrill of expensive vacations, designer clothes, exclusive parties. She had loved all of that. But had she loved Michael? Really loved him? The man himself, not what he represented. When she was honest with herself, truly honest, the answer was no. She had loved the idea of him. The security he offered. The lifestyle he made possible. But the man himself, his hopes and fears and dreams and vulnerabilities, those things had never really interested her. She had seen him as a provider first and a person second. She thought about the moment everything changed. The moment Michael told her they had lost everything. Her first thought hadn't been concern for him. It had been fear for herself. What will people think? How will I survive? What will I do without all of this? She had never once asked Michael how he felt about the loss. Never comforted him. Never offered to stand by him and rebuild together. Never suggested that material things didn't matter as long as they had each other. Instead she had turned cold, critical, distant. And then she had turned to someone else, someone who could give her what Michael supposedly couldn't. But even that had been a lie, a fantasy, a desperate grasp at maintaining the lifestyle she felt entitled to. Angela cried. Not for Michael. Not for the marriage she had destroyed. But for herself. For the future she had just lost. For the comfortable life that had slipped through her fingers. For the realization that she was now truly alone, without the wealth or status or connections that had defined her for so long. She realized too late that she had been given something precious. A man who loved her. A man who would have given her everything, who had given her everything. And she had thrown it away the moment she thought it was worthless. She had failed the most important test of her life, and there would be no second chance. Meanwhile, Michael stood on the balcony of his mansion, looking out over the city. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. He felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief that he had discovered the truth before wasting more years. Sadness that the woman he loved had never really existed, that the person he had married was just a carefully constructed illusion. Anger at the betrayal, at the years of lies, at the realization that he had been valued only for his wealth. But also gratitude. Gratitude that he had the means to protect himself. Gratitude that he had discovered the truth. Gratitude that he could now move forward with his eyes open. His assistant approached quietly, her footsteps soft on the marble floor. Mr. Richardson, the divorce papers have been filed. She's been served. The proceedings should move quickly given the prenuptial agreement. Is there anything else you need, sir? Michael was silent for a moment, watching the last rays of sunlight disappear below the horizon. Then he shook his head slowly. No, Rebecca. I think I finally have everything I need. The truth. And sometimes that's the most valuable thing of all. In the weeks that followed, Michael threw himself into work. But this time it was different. The frantic energy that had driven him for years was gone. He no longer felt the crushing weight of constantly proving himself. He no longer felt the need to chase endless success, to accumulate more wealth, to expand his empire simply for the sake of expansion. Instead, he focused on what mattered. His health, which had been deteriorating under the stress. His friendships, which he had neglected in favor of business and his marriage. His purpose, which had become clouded by obligation and expectation. He started working reasonable hours, leaving the office by 6 p.m. instead of staying until midnight. He delegated more to his capable team, trusting them with responsibilities he had always hoarded. He reached out to old friends he had neglected over the years. College roommates he hadn't spoken to in decades. Business partners from his early days who had moved on to other ventures. Neighbors from his childhood who still lived in the old neighborhood. He reconnected with his brother James, who lived across the country with his family. They hadn't been close in years, their relationship strained by distance and Michael's relentless focus on work. But now Michael called him regularly. They talked about their childhood, their parents who had both passed away, their hopes for the future. James was surprised by the change in his brother. You sound different, Michael. Lighter somehow. Like a weight has been lifted. Michael smiled. Yes. I've been carrying something heavy for a long time. I just didn't realize it until I set it down. Michael started attending therapy to process the betrayal and the pain. His therapist, Dr. Sarah Mitchell, was a kind woman in her 60s who specialized in helping high-achieving individuals navigate personal crises. She didn't judge. She didn't offer empty platitudes. She simply listened and asked questions that made Michael think deeply about his life, his choices, his patterns. In one session, she asked him why he had chosen to test Angela rather than simply trust his instincts. Michael was quiet for a long time. Because I didn't want to believe what my instincts were telling me. I wanted to be wrong. I wanted proof that the woman I loved was real, not just a projection of my hopes. Dr. Mitchell nodded. And now that you have that proof, how do you feel? Set. Relieved. Free. All of it at once. Slowly, Michael began to heal. The sharp pain of betrayal dulled to a manageable ache. The anger transformed into acceptance. The sadness gave way to cautious optimism. He realized that while Angela had hurt him deeply, she had also given him an unexpected gift. Clarity. The opportunity to start over. The chance to build a life based on truth rather than illusion. He started taking better care of himself. He hired a personal trainer and began exercising regularly. He changed his diet, cutting out the rich foods that had contributed to his health problems. He took up meditation, spending 20 minutes each morning in quiet reflection. He slept better. He felt better. He looked better. One afternoon, Michael sat in a coffee shop, watching people pass by outside the window. A young couple walked hand in hand, laughing at something one of them had said. An elderly couple shuffled slowly down the sidewalk, the man holding the woman's elbow to steady her. A mother pushed a stroller while her toddler walked beside her, pointing excitedly at a dog across the street. Michael smiled, feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. He realized that despite everything, he still believed in love. Real love. Not the kind built on money or status or what one person could provide for another, but the kind built on character and commitment and genuine connection. He knew it existed because he had seen it. In his parents' marriage before they passed. In his brother's relationship with his wife. In the elderly couple he had just watched shuffle down the street, still together after what must have been decades. Michael realized he had just chosen poorly. He had been so lonely, so desperate for connection, that he had missed the warning signs. Or perhaps he had seen them and chosen to ignore them, hoping that love could transform Angela into someone she wasn't. But that wasn't how it worked. People showed you who they were. It was your job to believe them. And Angela had shown him, in countless small ways over the years, that her love came with conditions. He had simply refused to see it until the test forced the truth into the light. But that didn't mean he would stop believing in love. It meant he would be wiser, more careful, more discerning. More willing to wait for someone whose character matched their words. Michael thought about the test he had conducted. Some people had called it cruel when word eventually got out through the social circles they had traveled in. Why would you do that to someone you love? Why would you deceive your own wife? Why would you create such an elaborate lie? But Michael didn't see it that way. He saw it as necessary. Because the truth, no matter how painful, is always better than a comfortable lie. And now he knew the truth. Angela had never loved him for who he was. She had loved what he represented. The lifestyle, the status, the security. And when she thought those things were gone, so was her love. The test didn't create that reality. It simply revealed what had always been true. Michael also thought about David Morrison, the man he had mentored, the man who had betrayed him by pursuing his wife. It stung deeply. Not just because of what David had done, but because of what it represented. Michael had genuinely cared about David's success. He had opened doors for him, shared hard-won wisdom, treated him like a younger brother in many ways. And David had repaid that kindness by taking advantage of a vulnerable situation, by pursuing Angela when he knew she was married, by disrespecting Michael in the most personal way possible. It was a lesson about human nature. Some people are users. They take what they can and move on, never considering the debt they owe or the relationships they destroy. Michael had learned that lesson. He wouldn't forget it, but he also wouldn't let it make him bitter or cynical. He would simply be more careful about who he trusted, about who he let into his inner circle, about who he invested his time and resources in. One evening, about 2 months after the divorce proceedings began, Michael received a letter in the mail. It was from Angela. He recognized her handwriting immediately. He almost threw it away without reading it, tossing it directly into the trash. What could she possibly have to say that he needed to hear? But curiosity got the better of him. He opened it slowly, carefully, as if the paper itself might hurt him. Inside, Angela had written a long apology. Pages and pages of explanations and justifications and regrets. She admitted everything. The affair with David. The phone calls where she had mocked Michael. The way she had treated him during their time in the small house. The fact that she had never really appreciated what they had together. She said she was sorry. That she had made a terrible mistake. That she wished she could go back and change everything. That she understood now what she had lost. That she would do anything for another chance. Michael read the letter twice, sitting in his study, a glass of whiskey untouched on the desk beside him. The words were eloquent, emotional, seemingly sincere. But they changed nothing. Apologies, no matter how heartfelt, cannot undo actions. Regret, no matter how deep, cannot erase choices. Angela was sorry now because she had lost something valuable. But where was that remorse when she was laughing at another man's house? Where was that regret when she was insulting Michael for being broke? Where was that understanding when she had the chance to show it? The truth was simple. Angela wasn't sorry for what she had done. She was sorry for the consequences. And those were two entirely different things. Michael folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer with other documents related to the divorce. He didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. Some apologies come too late. Some damage cannot be undone. Some bridges once burned can never be rebuilt. And some people only realize what they had after it's gone, when the opportunity to cherish it has passed forever. He closed the drawer and locked it, a symbolic gesture that felt appropriate. That chapter of his life was over. It was time to move forward. Michael threw himself into a new project that gave him genuine joy. He started a foundation dedicated to helping young entrepreneurs build their businesses, especially those from disadvantaged backgrounds like his own. He wanted to give back, to help others avoid the mistakes he had made, to share the lessons he had learned about business, about character, about the difference between success and fulfillment. He funded small business loans, offered mentorship programs, created networking opportunities, hosted workshops on everything from financial planning to emotional intelligence. He found purpose in that work, joy even, a sense of meaning that his business empire had never quite provided. He realized that wealth, while useful and comforting, was not the source of happiness. Relationships were. Integrity was. Character was. Purpose was. Contribution was. Those things could never be bought. They had to be earned, cultivated, protected. And they were far more valuable than any amount of money. Michael had spent decades accumulating wealth, believing that financial success would bring fulfillment. But now he understood that fulfillment came from living in alignment with your values, from building genuine connections, from knowing that the people in your life valued you for who you were, not what you had, from making a difference in ways that mattered. That was the real wealth. Everything else was just numbers in an account. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Michael attended a charity gala. It was one of those events he used to dread, obligatory appearances where he was expected to smile and mingle and write large checks. But now he found them meaningful. This particular gala benefited a children's hospital, a cause close to his heart. He was there to support the cause, not to be seen or photographed or admired. He had donated a substantial amount anonymously and only agreed to attend because the hospital director had personally asked him to come. As he stood near the bar, sipping a glass of water and watching the crowd, he heard a familiar voice behind him. Michael. He turned slowly. Angela stood there, dressed elegantly in a black evening gown, her makeup perfect, her hair styled immaculately. But there was something different in her eyes. Desperation. A hollow quality that hadn't been there before. She looked thinner. Older somehow. The confidence she used to carry had been replaced by something fragile. Michael. I've been trying to reach you. Her voice trembled slightly. Michael nodded politely, his face neutral. I know. His tone was calm but firm, offering no opening for reconciliation. Angela stepped closer, her hand reaching out as if to touch his arm, then pulling back when she saw his slight withdrawal. I need to talk to you. About us. About what happened. I need you to understand. Michael took a slow breath, measuring his words carefully. There is no us, Angela. Not anymore. Those days are over. Angela's eyes filled with tears, though Michael couldn't tell if they were genuine or calculated. I know. I know I ruined everything. But I need you to understand. I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. I was scared and stupid and I didn't realize what I had until it was gone. Michael looked at her for a long moment, studying her face, searching for sincerity. What he saw was regret, certainly. But regret for what? For hurting him? Or for losing what he had provided? The distinction mattered. Michael spoke, his voice calm but firm, each word chosen carefully. Angela, you didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. Multiple choices. Deliberate choices. You chose to leave emotionally when you thought I had nothing. You chose to betray me with someone I had trusted and mentored. You chose to mock me and insult me and treat me like I was worthless. Those weren't mistakes. They weren't accidents or momentary lapses in judgment. They were decisions. Conscious decisions that showed me exactly who you are when the comfort and security are stripped away. And I'm grateful for that revelation, as painful as it was. Angela's tears spilled over, running down her carefully made-up face, leaving tracks of mascara. But I love you, Michael. I love you. I know that now. I know what I lost. Michael shook his head gently, sadly, as if explaining something to a child. No, Angela. You don't love me. You never did. You loved what I could give you. You loved the lifestyle, the status, the security, the prestige that came with being my wife. And when you thought that was gone, you were gone too. Within days. Within hours, even. That's not love. That's convenience. That's transaction. That's conditional attachment. Love stays. Love supports. Love doesn't abandon ship the moment the waters get rough. Angela reached out again to touch his arm, her fingers trembling. But Michael stepped back, maintaining the distance between them. I've changed. I've learned. I understand now what really matters. I would do things differently if I had another chance. I would stand by you. I would support you. I would be the wife you deserved. Michael looked at her with something like pity. Perhaps you have changed. Perhaps you have learned. But that doesn't change what happened. It doesn't erase the choices you made. It doesn't undo the betrayal. And more importantly, it doesn't obligate me to give you another chance to hurt me. I've moved on, Angela. I've healed. I've built a life that doesn't include you. And I'm happier now than I was during our marriage. That should tell you everything you need to know. Angela stood there, frozen, tears streaming down her face, her hands clutching her small evening bag as if it were a lifeline. But what am I supposed to do now? Where am I supposed to go? Michael's expression softened slightly, though his resolve remained firm. You're supposed to learn from this. You're supposed to grow. You're supposed to figure out who you want to be and then become that person. But you need to do that work yourself, for yourself. Not for me. Not to win me back. Not to recapture what you lost. But because becoming a better person is its own reward. I'm not angry anymore. I've moved past that. I hope you find what you're looking for. I hope you build a good life. I hope you find genuine happiness. But it won't be with me. We're done. Angela's voice broke completely. I'm so sorry, Michael. I'm so sorry for everything. I wish I could take it all back. Michael's voice was gentle but final. I know you are. But some things can't be taken back. Some things can't be fixed. Some damage is permanent. And sometimes the best thing we can do is accept the consequences of our actions and move forward. I forgive you, Angela. Not for your sake but for mine. Because carrying anger and resentment only hurts the person carrying it. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. It doesn't mean trust can be rebuilt. It doesn't mean we go back to how things were. It means I release you from my life and wish you well from a distance." Michael turned to walk away, then paused and looked back at her one last time. "If you take nothing else from this, understand this. Character matters. Integrity matters. How you treat people when you have nothing to gain from them matters. Who you are when no one is watching, when the circumstances are difficult, when there's no benefit to being kind, that's who you really are. Everything else is performance. You performed for 10 years. I believe the performance. That's on me. But now the curtain has fallen. The show is over. And we both have to live with the truth. Goodbye, Angela." He walked away, disappearing into the crowd, leaving her standing alone near the bar. Angela watched him go, watched him greet other guests with warm smiles, watched him laugh at someone's joke, watched him move through the world without her as if she had never mattered at all. And perhaps she realized with devastating clarity she never had. At least not in the way she had believed. She had been an accessory to his life, a beautiful ornament, a status symbol. And she had treated him the same way. As a provider. A resource. A means to an end. Neither of them had truly seen the other. But Michael had learned that lesson. He had grown from it. And she was only just beginning to understand what she had lost. Later that night, Michael stood on his balcony again, looking out over the city he loved. The lights twinkled below him like earthbound stars. He felt lighter than he had in months. Free in a way he hadn't felt since before his marriage. He had faced his past. Confronted his pain. Spoken his truth. And chosen to move forward without bitterness or regret. He thought about the test he had conducted all those months ago. People still asked him about it. Was it worth it? Was it cruel? Was it justified? And his answer was always the same. It was necessary. Because living in illusion is no way to live. Because truth, however painful, is always preferable to comfortable lies. Because knowing who people really are allows you to make informed decisions about your life. The test had cost him his marriage. But it had saved him from wasting decades more on a relationship built on sand. It had freed him to find something real, something genuine, something lasting. And that freedom was worth the pain. He stood there for a long time, feeling the cool night air on his face, listening to the distant sounds of the city, feeling at peace in a way he had forgotten was possible. The chapter with Angela was finally, truly closed. And ahead of him lay endless possibility. The chance to write a new story. One based on truth and character and genuine connection. One where he would be valued for who he was, not what he had. One worth living. Michael's story is not unique. Across the world, in every culture, in every economic class, in every generation, people face the same fundamental question. Are the people in my life with me for who I am, or for what I have? It's a question that haunts the wealthy and the poor alike. It troubles the successful and the struggling. It keeps people awake at night, wondering if they're truly loved or simply useful. Because betrayal knows no income bracket. Greed exists at every level of society. The desire for comfort, for security, for status, these are universal human impulses. And character, or the lack of it, reveals itself when tested. When circumstances change. When the benefits disappear. When staying requires sacrifice. The difference is that Michael had the resources to test it deliberately. To create a scenario that would force the truth into the light. To construct a situation where Angela's true character would be revealed beyond any doubt. And what he discovered changed everything. Not just his marriage, but his entire understanding of relationships, of love, of what really matters in life. There's a painful reality that many people refuse to acknowledge, a truth that feels too uncomfortable to accept. Not everyone who says they love you actually does. Not everyone who promises loyalty truly means it. Not everyone who stands beside you in good times will remain in bad times. Some people love the idea of you, the status you provide, the lifestyle you offer, the security you represent, the reflected glory they receive by association. And when those things disappear, when the benefits evaporate, so does their affection. It's not always malicious or consciously calculated. Sometimes people genuinely believe they love you. They feel affection. They enjoy your company. They appreciate your presence. But that's not the same as love. Real love, deep love, committed love, that's something different entirely. It's tested by fire and emerges stronger. It weathers storms and finds anchor. It faces difficulty and chooses to stay. Fake love crumbles at the first sign of trouble. It evaporates when circumstances shift. It reveals itself as conditional, transactional, ultimately hollow. Michael learned this lesson the hardest way possible. Through betrayal. Through abandonment. Through the devastation of discovering that 10 years of his life had been built on illusion. But in doing so, he gained something invaluable. Clarity. Perfect, crystalline clarity about who Angela was and who he was. He now knew without a shadow of doubt, without any lingering questions, that Angela had never truly loved him. And while that knowledge was excruciating, while it tore through him like shattered glass, it was also liberating. Because he was no longer living a lie. He was no longer investing his heart and time and energy in someone who didn't deserve it. He was free to move forward with eyes wide open. Free to find someone who would love him for who he was, not what he had. Free to build a life based on truth rather than comfortable deception. The question we must all ask ourselves is this. If everything we had was taken away tomorrow, who would still be standing beside us? If we lost our job, our house, our savings, our status, our health, who would remain? Would our spouse stay or would they leave? Would our friends support us or would they disappear? Would the people we've invested in still care or would they move on to more beneficial connections? The answers to those questions reveal everything. They show us who truly values us and who simply values what we provide. They distinguish between genuine relationships and transactional arrangements. And while the truth can be devastating, while it can shatter our illusions and break our hearts, it is always better to know. Because a life built on illusion is no life at all. It's a performance, a charade, a slow-motion tragedy waiting to unfold. Michael's story also raises another uncomfortable question. Was he wrong to test Angela? Was it manipulative to create an elaborate lie? Was it cruel to put her through a month of believing they had lost everything? Some would say absolutely yes. That testing someone's loyalty is a violation of trust. That creating false circumstances to observe behavior is unethical. That it causes unnecessary pain and damages relationships even if they survive the test. But Michael would argue differently, and millions who have faced similar situations might agree. He would say that the test didn't create the betrayal. It didn't manufacture Angela's character flaws. It didn't force her to mock him, insult him, abandon him, or cheat on him. The test simply revealed what was already there, waiting beneath the surface like a cancer. Angela's true character existed long before the test began. The test just brought it into the light. It created circumstances where she could no longer hide behind the comfort and security Michael provided. It stripped away the benefits that masked her conditional love. And in doing so, it saved Michael from wasting more years, perhaps decades, on a relationship that was fundamentally hollow. Without the test, he might have lived his entire life never knowing. Never understanding that Angela's love had a price tag. Never realizing that he was valued only for what he could provide. Is that a better outcome? Is ignorance truly bliss? Or is painful truth always preferable to comfortable illusion? So I ask you, if the person you love lost everything today, everything they have, everything that makes them seem successful or secure or valuable in society's eyes, what would you do? Would you stay and support them through the struggle? Would you stand by their side with unwavering commitment and help them rebuild from nothing? Would you remind them that they're more than their bank account, more than their job title, more than their material possessions? Or would you, like Angela, reveal a face they never expected? Would you withdraw emotionally? Would you turn critical and cold? Would you seek comfort in someone else's arms? Would you abandon them when they needed you most? These are uncomfortable questions. Questions we don't like to ask ourselves because we fear the answers. Because examining our own character in that light forces us to confront truths we might prefer to avoid. But they are necessary questions. Essential questions. Because integrity is defined by what we do when no one is watching. Character is revealed when circumstances turn against us. Love is proven when staying becomes difficult and leaving becomes tempting. Anyone can love someone who has everything. Anyone can commit to someone who makes life easy. Anyone can stay with someone who provides comfort and security. But who will love someone who has nothing? Who will commit when sacrifice is required? Who will stay when difficulty replaces ease? Michael's story is a reminder that wealth, while valuable and useful, is not the measure of a person's worth. That relationships built solely on material provision are destined to fail. That marriages founded on what someone has rather than who someone is cannot survive the inevitable storms of life. That love, real love, must be built on something deeper. Something that survives loss and hardship and change. Something that endures when everything else falls away. Something that says, I choose you not because of what you give me, but because of who you are. Because your character matters more than your bank account. Because your integrity is more valuable than your assets. Because loving you is its own reward, regardless of external circumstances. Michael lost his wife. But in losing her, he gained himself. He gained clarity about what really matters. He gained freedom from living a lie. He gained the knowledge that he deserved better, that he was worth more than being valued only for his wealth. And that knowledge, painful as it was to acquire, became the foundation for a better future. A future where he wouldn't settle for conditional love. Where he wouldn't accept transactional relationships. Where he would wait for someone who saw him, truly saw him, and loved what they saw regardless of what came with it. Today, several years after the test, Michael is still single. He's dated a few people, explored some possibilities, allowed himself to be open to connection. But he's in no rush. He's learned to be patient, to be discerning, to look beneath the surface, to value character over appearance, to prize integrity over charm, to assess someone's true nature before opening his heart. He knows what he wants now. And more importantly, he knows what he won't settle for. He's building a life that doesn't depend on another person to validate him or complete him. A life that is fulfilling and meaningful on its own. A life rich with purpose and connection and contribution. And when the right person comes along, someone who loves him for who he is rather than what he has, he'll be ready. He'll recognize it. He'll appreciate it in ways he couldn't before. But until then he's content. Because he's learned the most important lesson of all. That the most important relationship you can have is the one with yourself. Angela, on the other hand, struggled for a long time. She moved to a different city hoping for a fresh start, hoping to escape the gossip and judgment that followed her. She tried to rebuild her life with the modest settlement from the divorce, but the lifestyle she had once known remained forever out of reach. She found work, first in retail and then eventually as an office manager for a small company, jobs that paid the bills but felt worlds away from the life of luxury she had enjoyed. She lived modestly, quietly, in a small apartment that felt like a prison compared to the mansion she had called home. The reputation she had earned followed her like a shadow. Word had gotten out through mutual friends and social connections about what she had done. About how she had betrayed Michael. About how she had left him the moment she thought he was broke. About the affair with David. People talked. Gossip. Judged. Potential romantic partners heard the stories and kept their distance, unwilling to risk being her next victim. She tried dating apps, blind dates set up by well-meaning acquaintances, chance meetings at coffee shops. But every budding connection eventually died when the subject of her past came up. She couldn't escape it. It defined her in ways she never intended. She thought often about Michael, about what she had lost, about the choices she had made, about the woman she had been and the woman she wished she had been. The regret was constant, a dull ache that never quite faded. She replayed moments in her mind. The night he told her they had lost everything. Her reaction. The coldness. The judgment. The immediate emotional withdrawal. If she could go back, would she choose differently? She wanted to believe the answer was yes. But in her most honest moments, she wasn't sure. Because choosing differently would have required her to be a different person. Someone with different values. Different priorities. Different character. And character isn't changed by regret. It's changed by hard work, self-reflection, and genuine transformation. Work that Angela was only beginning to understand. The last anyone heard from Angela, she was still searching. Searching for someone to give her the life she once had. Searching for validation. Searching for security. Searching for a way back to the comfort she had known. But she never found it. Because she was looking in the wrong places, seeking external solutions to internal problems. She was looking for someone else to fill the void inside her, to make her feel valuable and secure and worthy. But that void could never be filled by money or status or another person. It could only be filled by her own growth, by learning to love herself, by developing character and integrity from the inside out, by becoming someone worthy of genuine love rather than conditional attachment. But that work, the hard work of self-improvement and personal transformation, the daily discipline of choosing integrity over convenience, was something Angela never fully committed to. She understood it intellectually. She could talk about it in therapy sessions and conversations with friends. But understanding and doing are not the same thing. And so she remained somewhat stuck, trapped in a cycle of her own making. Not in poverty or desperation, but in the gray area of regret and missed opportunities. A cautionary tale of what happens when we value the wrong things and realize it too late. Michael's story ended differently. Not because he was wealthy, though that certainly helped in practical ways. But because he chose growth over bitterness. He chose to learn from his pain rather than be consumed by it. He chose to move forward rather than dwell in the past. He chose to see the experience not as a tragedy but as a teaching. And in making those choices, conscious and repeated, he created a life worth living. A life built on truth rather than illusion. A life defined by character rather than material success. A life that, while not perfect, was authentically his. A life that reflected his values, honored his growth, and opened space for genuine connection when and if it came. So I leave you with this final thought. Wealth can be lost in a market crash or bad decision. Status can fade when circumstances change. Power can disappear when positions shift. Beauty fades with time. Health can fail without warning. But character endures. Integrity remains. The way you treat people when you have nothing to gain from them, that's permanent. Who you are when no one is watching, when there's no benefit to being kind, when difficulty tests your commitment, that's what lasts. And the people who love you for who you are rather than what you have, those are the people worth keeping. Those are the relationships worth fighting for. Those are the connections that will sustain you when everything else falls away. Everything else is just noise. Everything else is just illusion. Everything else is temporary and ultimately meaningless. What would you have done in Angela's place? If your partner lost everything tomorrow, would you stay when times got tough? Would you support the person you claimed to love when that love required sacrifice rather than benefited you? Would you stand by their side as they rebuilt from nothing? Or would you have done exactly what she did and left the moment the money disappeared, the moment the lifestyle evaporated, the moment you had to face difficulty? Tell me in the comments. I want to know where your heart stands. I want to know what your character would choose. Because that answer reveals more about you than any test ever could. It shows who you really are beneath the performance and presentation. And knowing that truth about yourself and others is the beginning of wisdom. And if you think this story was powerful, if it made you think or feel or question, wait until you hear what happened when a forgotten housemaid saved a billionaire from the one person he trusted most. Subscribe for more timeless stories. Stories that touch your heart and open your eyes to the truth about human nature. Stories that challenge your assumptions and make you examine your own character. Stories that remind you what really matters in this brief, precious life we're given. Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying until the end. Thank you for being part of this community. And remember, the truest test of character is not how we act when we have everything, but how we act when we have nothing. That's when the mask falls. That's when the truth emerges. That's when you discover who people really are.